Hi everyone, at the end of this video we'll have set up our saving and loading and all of our functions to change all of our different options. So when we actually implement them it will just be much quicker. Okay, so what we're going to do is in our root folder we're going to create a new folder. We're actually going to call it globals. And now what we're also going to do is you're going to go scene, new scene, and let's add in a control node. And then this control node we're going to change to options. And now let's save this options. So we're not going to save it in scenes menu. We're going to save it in globals and save. So the reason we're saving it in globals instead of under the scenes is because of the fact that this is its own specific scene plus the script we'll create for it, and it's just better for it to be by itself. So now what we're going to do is you're going to go to project settings, and then you're going to find auto load, which is the fourth one. Now here where you see it says path, click on the two full stops next to it, double click on globals, click on options, open, and then on the very right hand side you'll see it says add. So let's add it. So what this does is it adds it as a global scene. We'll play our music from here. We'll have all of our variables we want to save in here as well, and it'll just make our lives much simpler. So let's close this. So what we're going to do is first we're going to add a new scene, a new node in under options. So just press Control A and type in audio. So you want an audio stream player 2D. The reason we're choosing an audio stream player 2D is because of the fact that Godot doesn't have a proper way to control volume just yet. So how we're going to do it is we're actually going to use the max distance from the audio player 2D. So as you can see, the max distance is 2000. We'll keep that as our max volume, and then when it would be 0, the max distance doesn't actually allow 0, it only allows for 1, and that's our 0 volume. So that's how we're going to use our volume. Let's rename our audio stream player to music, and let's add a script to our options. So just click on options, attach a script, and here where it says global options, just click create, because remember we want to keep this separate from all of our other scripts and our scenes. So now we're actually going to create all of the different, now let's leave them open. Okay, so we're going to create all of our different variables that we're going to save, plus we're going to have a few we're not going to save. So what we're going to do is you're actually going to have the hashtag key, which is the comment. If you come from Godot or most other languages, the 2 forward slashes equals comment. In Godot, if you come from GameMaker, not Godot, sorry, or most other programming languages, 2 forward slashes equals comment. In Godot, it's just the comment. It's just the hashtag. Here we're going to put in temporary, and we're going to put in another hashtag, and we're going to call it saved. So all this means is any variables that we're not going to save, go here, and any variables we do save, go under saved. Okay, so the first variable we're going to make is actually a constant variable. Constants are just saved under const, and a constant just means you can't actually change it under normal circumstances. You can't actually change it whilst you're busy playing. When it's set to that, it will always be set to that. Okay, so now what we're going to do for a constant, you always have the entire variable, the constant, as a capital, and it just makes it easier to identify whilst you're busy working. This constant is going to be called save path, and it's going to equal raise, comma, raise forward slash, and then it's going to be save.json, and then close your quotation marks. Okay, so this, we're just keeping it as raise for now because that's just our temporary one, and it will be easier to find. So when we're actually busy working with it, if we want to edit it in the middle of it, all that we'll have to do is we'll be able to find it in here. Whereas if we saved it under the proper name, it would actually take some time to find. So now our next variable, also it doesn't get saved, it's called settings, and it equals an array like that. Okay, so now we're going to put in all of our different saved variables that we do save. So the first one is going to be called master volume, and we're going to set it to 2000. So master volume is exactly that. It's the master volume. So we're going to have three different ones. It's going to be master volume, music volume, and effects volume. So music volume is going to control the music, how loud our music is. Our effects volume is going to control how loud our different effects are. And then our master volume just controls the two of them as well. Next, we're going to put in mute buttons. So it's be master mute equals false. Music mute equals false. Then effects mute equals false. Okay. Now that we've got our audio out of the way, we're going to do our resolution. So Godot doesn't actually save vectors, so you have to individually save your width and your height. You won't be able to save it like this, for instance. And then there will be your width, and there will be your height. It doesn't actually save it like that. What it does, so that's when you're busy saving it. That's how it doesn't save it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say res underscore width underscore width, and we're going to set it to 1920, and then our res underscore height we'll save as 1080. And then when we actually are busy setting our resolution, we'll just draw from these two variables. Our next one will be full screen, and that will just equal false. Okay, so those are there. Our audio is done, and there's our resolution done. Next, we actually have to do our controls. So now we have to save the scan codes. Now, if you remember, I just need to see. Yeah, I did. In the downloaded file, you see there's a text document called scan codes. So what those scan codes are, here are the scan codes. The scan codes is what Godot reads that particular key as. So space is 32. And then here are the scan codes we're going to be working with for now. So I'm just going to copy this. Actually, we don't need any of those. We just need space and escape. So the other four, that would be whilst we're actually busy working with the game, but because of the fact that this is literally just for a menu template, we don't need them, so I'm not going to use them. So here are the two scan codes we do need. So our first one is var sp use, and that equals 32 because that's my keyboard. And then next var sp pause equals 167777217. Check, yeah. Okay, so I just called them SPUs and SP pause because of the fact that it's personal preference, to be honest. And if you had to add in multiple different things, let's say you had split screen, you would want to just differentiate it like that. So now that's everything that we are going to save. Now we have a few more temporary variables we're going to add. So the first temporary variable we're going to add is var play music. Okay, so what play music is you have to work out exactly how loud it is. So let's say your master volume isn't at max volume, so you'd need to first work that out and then work out how loud your music volume must be against your master volume. That's what the play music is. And then the exact same would be for play effects. The default is just 2000. Actually, let's make the default 1. Okay, now we need another variable. We're going to call it new choice. New choice just equals 1. Okay, so what the new choice is when you have music and then you get to actually select your music and everything, this is where your music, well, this is where it would choose your music for you. And then next, var song. Var song is just the songs that you would actually load. And then lastly, it's var menu equals true. Okay, so var menu, what that means is, I'm actually just going to get rid of all of these spaces, we don't need all of them. What all that var menu is it just determines must it play menu music or must it play game music. And then once again, I don't need any of these. Okay, so we are going to use our process function. So let's just open that up a bit, but we do need to add in a few extra functions. The first function we're going to put in is input event. So basically what's going to happen is that when you actually choose a different key, then that's where the input event would come in. Okay, our next function is function choose music, pass. Our next function is menu music. I forgot how to spell. Our next function is game music, pass. Next, after game music, it's our resolution. Let's open that up a bit more. After our resolution, it's save game, and then lastly load game. Okay, let's save all of that. Okay, so now what we're going to do, in our ready, we're going to just delete that, and we're going to call some of our functions. Even though there's nothing in them for now, we can still call them. So the first function we're going to call is load game, and the reason why we're calling load game first is because we need to see if there's any other variables that aren't the default ones. Let's say we change our resolution to 800 by 600 for instance. It needs to know that and then know to save that as that, and then it will only choose our music, decide what music to play, and it will set our resolution. Okay, now what's going to happen, before we do this, let's quickly go into, okay, let's first close this options so we don't get confused. Now we need to actually add in all of our assets. So let's right click, create a new folder called assets. So in assets you can see it's empty right now. What we're going to do is, give me a moment, I just need to quickly find all the assets that was there. So the only assets we are going to use for now is we're just going to use the music assets. But we do need a folder for sounds. No, we can leave. Yeah, let's not. So we just paste it for now. Okay, as you can see, it's copied over, but now what it's doing is it's actually busy importing all of the assets for us, so we're just going to wait for that for a second. So as you can see, it's busy importing all of our assets. Okay, just busy waiting for the assets. I'm actually going to have some water whilst I wait. Oh cool, it's nearly done importing assets. Okay, so now as you can see, it's imported all of our different assets. So we have our game music and we have our menu music. So the music has to be a WAV file or .ogg because Godot doesn't work with MP3s for now. Okay, So the next thing we're going to do is click on music, and then you see here where it says stream at the bottom right hand side underneath inspector. Just move any of the menu songs over to there. The only reason why we're doing that is because whilst you're working with it, if there isn't anything in there, it will give an error when you start working with it. So we're just avoiding that error so people don't get worried about anything. Doesn't matter which song because it's going to overwrite the song immediately. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back to the script, and this function input we actually don't need. I accidentally said we need it, but we don't. So we're going to work with function process for now. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to be an if statement, and then you're going to do an exclamation mark. The exclamation mark just means that not, or if it isn't doing whatever you're about to type in. So it's $music is playing, so it's only going to use this code if nothing is playing. It's not going to do anything if there is something playing, and it's going to choose music. Okay, so next, after we've chosen our music, now we're going to work with the play music and play effects that we had. So we're going to go if master volume is larger than 0 and music volume is larger than 0, then what will happen is play music will equal, first we need to turn it into an integer. Okay, well, first of all, the reason why we said and instead of or is because what you wanted to do is it only does this if that both of them are larger than 0. If either of them are 0, it will do another piece of code which we'll type in a moment. So now we have our int. Okay, so now we're going to do another bracket, and in this bracket we're going to say master volume divided by 2000. That just gives us a 1, and then it's going to be times another bracket music volume divided by 2000, and then afterwards we're just going to times by 2000. This is just a more accurate way of doing it that I've found. That's why I'm doing it that way. Now we're going to do an else. So if either one is 0, then what will happen is play music will equal 1. So the reason we have play music equaling 1 is because remember with the music, the max distance, it can't be 0. If you try and actually keep it at 0, it will give you errors, and that could actually crash it. So that's why we're keeping it at 1. And then lastly, it's going to be music.set max. It's not a capital D, it's a small d, distance, and it's going to be play music. So it's just going to be like that. Okay, what we're also going to do is we're just going to copy that line of text, we're going to paste it, and we're going to change music volume to effects, because we're just going to have the exact same one for effects. So when we actually work with effects, it's already there. Yeah. Okay, so then there is our process done. Then next, we're going to do our choose music. Okay, so in our choose music, it's quite simple. It's just an if then else statement. So if menu equals true, then it must select menu music, else, then it must just play game music, just like that. So we don't need anything extra. So now what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be working in, menu music. So in our menu music, first what we're going to type in is randomize. So the reason why we're typing in randomize first is because what's going to happen is when you want Godot or any engine really to select a random number, the first number is always the same. Randomize makes it skip that first number, and then from there we'll always have a random number. It's just every engine has that. I haven't actually seen an engine without that. That's why we just do that. So new choice equals again int rand range, then 1 comma 5, and then close bracket. So the reason why we integer it is because we want whole numbers. If we don't have whole numbers, it just means we have to type out more code that we don't want to do. So I got the 5 there because in menu music, you'll see we have 5 songs. If you have, say, 50 songs, then it would be 50 and so forth. So now what we're going to do is we're going to match. Okay, so we're going to match our new choice. I'll explain what match is now. 0. Wait, 1, not 0. Pass. Okay, so a match is basically a shorter version of an if then else statement, or a switch statement if you come from another programming language. So like for instance in choose music, you can actually say match menu, then true, menu music, false, game music. So these two are exactly the same. It's just that when you're using an if then else statement, if you're working with quite a lot of if then else statements, it's better to use a match if possible. Match statement if possible. So minimize that again. So 1 is going to be song equals load. So what we're doing is we're actually loading the song, whatever song we want to work with. So our first one is going to be essence. Next is 2. So our song is going to be equal load. It's going to be Fallout. Next one is 3. Our song equals load. It's Horizons. Next one is 4. Again, song equals load. It's Pulsefire. And then lastly, number 5, song equals load, Skyrim. Okay. So now what we've got is we've told it that whichever number it has, it must decide if it's 1, it must load Essence, if it's 2, Fallout, and so forth. Now we actually just needed to tell it to play the music. So after you type that out, then it's going to be music dot set stream. So now that you're setting your stream, it's going to be song, and then next it's going to be music dot play 0.0. So the reason for the 0.0 is just so that you start the song from the very beginning. Okay, so that's that for the menu music. We're actually going to copy this because it's going to be exactly the same as the game music. Literally the only difference is these loads, I actually forgot the names. That's going to be alive. What's this? Asleep. After asleep, it's dangerous. After dangerous, it's save. Right, enter. And after save, it's shot. Okay. So then there's all of our music set. Next is our resolutions. Okay. So all that we're going to do is so with our resolutions, we're actually going to set it to affect our project settings in the general window. It's going to change that resolution, that size, as well as change the actual window size. Reason why we're doing that is because I've noticed the scaling can be a bit off if you don't do that. That's why I do that. And whilst we're actually in there, so go back to project settings. When you go into window, the stretch mode, you need to set the mode to 2D, and the aspect you need to set to expand. So just close that. Now let's start here. So this one is project settings dot set setting. Okay, so this setting you actually have to type out the display window /size /width. So it's display window size width, comma And now we actually need to set our value, which will be our res width. Okay, next we're going to set our height. So I just copied and pasted it because of the fact that we're literally just changing width to height. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually change the window size itself. So it's going to be rs.set window size. It's going to be a vector2. It's going to be res width, res height, and then we're going to close it off. So this will actually control the actual resizing. So now what we're going to do in resolution, we're also going to control our full screen. So if full screen equals true, our rs.set window full screen, it's going to be false. Copy and paste that. I'll explain why we're going to set it as false and then true. It's because if you resize your window when it's not, well, whenever you change your resolutions, what can happen is, once again, the scaling can look a bit off. Well, it has whenever I've done it, so that's why I literally just do this just to make sure that it doesn't look off. False, true, false. Now, if your window is false, we're going to add a few extra lines of code. So first of all, os.current screen equals 0. So what this means is that if you've got multiple screens, 0 will work with your primary monitor. So in this case, it would be the monitor that I'm not working with now, but it's... No, 0 actually doesn't work with your primary monitor, apologies. 0 works with the monitor that's plugged in first, which is the monitor I'm working on now. My primary monitor is my other monitor. So os.set window position vector 2 0 comma 0. Okay, so this line of code we actually don't need, because normally it would be for people with their primary monitor, and once again I'm using my second monitor. So we're just setting the position to 0 0 so that it always works where it goes on top there, or else what can happen is if you've got a windowed monitor, well, if you've got a windowed screen and then you set it to quite a large resolution, the part of the screen can actually be underneath at the very bottom, so below where you would normally be able to see. So that's all that we're doing that for. Okay, to get started with the saving, what we're going to do is we're just going to remember our var settings. We're actually going to work with that here, so var settings, because our array. Then you're just going to press enter like that. And the reason we're going to do that is because of the fact that we're actually going to save all of everything we're going to save is going to be in here. So first we're going to do our resolution. So we're going to call it resolution. And then it's going to equal another array like this. And now it's going to be width equals res width, comma, height equals res height. So the reason why we're doing the comma is just to show that it's not the last item in the array. Okay, so when you're done, that's it for the resolution. Now, in our resolution, at the end of the curly bracket, we need to put in another comma. Now we need to put in full screen equals full screen, comma. Now we have our master volume equals, once again, master volume, comma. Now we're going to do our mutes directly underneath the volume. Don't have to, but I'm just doing it for simplicity's sake. Next is music volume, and music mute, and lastly effects. And effects mute equals effects mute. Okay, when you're at the last item that you want to save within the array, you don't put in the comma. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're also going to save our controls. So we just have sp_use and sp_pause. So we're going to go comma, sp_use equals sp_use, comma, sp_pause equals sp_pause. Okay, as you can see, there are two controls, and the fact that this space is there doesn't actually matter. I'm just using it once again as a visual. It's to help me visually see that I've moved on to the next part, which is controls. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this. So first, we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call it save file. And now our save file is going to equal file.new brackets. So now that we've created the new save file, it's going to be save file. We're going to open it. So first we need to tell it where it needs to open it. So that's our save path. And now comma, now we need to tell it that we are actually going to write. Oh, I didn't do a dot, that's why. We're actually going to write to the file, whereas if we were going to load, we would say read instead. And now we're going to say save file dot store line. Okay, and now because it's a JSON file, it's to JSON, and then it's settings, and then we just close it like that. Okay, and now lastly we just close our save file so we don't accidentally work in it. And then there we go, there's your saving. So let's actually quickly do this. Going to ready, let's comment out our load game, and let's type in save game. Now if you press F5, what will happen is, remember for me it opens up in my primary monitor, so I just have to move it. Now quit. I think this, nope, that's the wrong one, sorry. In my assets, in template, there is my save.json. Let's edit with Notepad. Okay, and as you can see, there's everything we've just saved to it. So now what we need to do is we actually need to call all of that. So let me just find Godot. Okay, so now we're going to delete the save game, plus also the comment in front of the load game. Going to minimize our save game, and let's actually set up our load game. So our load game is going to be quite simple. Again, we're going to create a variable called save file, and again it's going to be a file.new. But now what we're going to do, we're going to check if the save file exists, and this code will, so it will check if the save file exists, and if it doesn't exist, then it won't do anything, but if it does exist, it will actually do the code that we need it to do. So just like that, and then return. Okay, so now if there is actually code that, if there is actually something, well, if there is a file, then it will run this code. It will go save file. Now it's going to open it. So it's save path. And now remember, instead of saying write, we're going to say read. It's like that. So now we're going to create another new variable. We're going to call this variable data. It's again going to be an array. So this data is going to pass the JSON information. Give me a second. So what it's going to do, by pass the JSON information, it's just going to read all of this, and it will let us be able to call this information. That one. Pass JSON, and then it's just going to be, wait, I forgot my bracket. It's save file, and then we're just telling it to get it as text, just like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is all of our variables that are saved, we're just going to copy and paste here. Just going to do that. Now all we need to do is we just need to get rid of variable in front of it. Okay, so the master volume isn't going to be 2000, it's going to be data, square bracket, then single quotation, master volume, single quotation, close square bracket. So how we get that is our data, which is our array that we've just made here, and then the square bracket tells you what it needs to call from it. So we know it's master volume because that's what we called it here, master volume. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste this over everything. And then for everything except for res width and res height, we're literally just going to copy and paste the variable names because we called them the exact same thing. Okay, so everything except res width and res height is done. Now for res width and res height, remember, here we first called it resolution, and then it calls it in resolution. So what we have to do, we have to go resolution, and then another square bracket, and we call this one, we're working with width, and then this one is resolution, square bracket, height, and close the square, just like that. So now we'll be able to call all of that. So what we're going to do is, let's actually, give me a second, let's change our height to 600 and our width to 800. Let's save that, minimize, and let's play. And as you can see, it set it to 800 by 600. So there we go. So now that we've got all of that set up, what we're going to do next is, let me just go into scenes, options, we're going to sort out the video, the audio, and the controls. And then when we're done with that, we're also just going to create a HUD level, which will be literally an in-game pause menu, but we'll just set our entire HUD up to that. And then when we're done with that, we'll actually be able to create a game from there. Okay, thanks guys.